We could do the Todd logic, the Todd logic of this was 50% off, so I bought two.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, I got to show you this new sander I got.
Thank you for joining us. I'm Gio, this is Todd, and welcome to Bench Critters. And Todd, I'm excited about this one.
I am too, brother. We've been talking about doing this for a long time. I've been really anxious to get this video made.
We have. And if you watch quite a few woodworking channels on YouTube, what you'll no doubt have noticed over the past few years is that the workshops, the tools, the expense in these things has got much more elaborate as time has gone on, and including, in fact, our own workshops. But something that Todd and I are completely in agreement on is that anything over and above what we're going to show you today simply will add some convenience or save you some time. It won't actually improve the quality of the stuff that you will produce.
And so we focus on the absolute essentials. We've set ourselves a budget of $1,500 to kit out a starter workshop. This minimal list will open up an entire world for you.
And for anybody that is wondering, that is roughly 0.5% of Todd's monthly spend on woodworking tools. For anyone who doesn't know, Todd buys things in triplicate just in case.
I'm like, $1,500, okay, I can cut down a tree for that.
We could do the Todd logic, the Todd logic of this was 50% off, so I bought two.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get all these open box deals on things. Oh, I got to show you this new sander I got.
And you do as well. I know you do. I know that wasn't a joke. You've got a new sander sitting there, at least one.
Maybe.
So what we're going to do is to show you not just the tools, but what $1,500 buys you in terms of things that you can do.
Yeah, so why don't you kick us off with the power tools? We've figured out this is going to be about half the budget, I think, right?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, this is the biggest ticket item in the power tools section, and that is because it's the most used item. You'll never regret spending money on a decent one of these. So in order to plane, flatten and thickness boards, in order to cut channels and recesses, in order to use cutting templates, and for a wealth of profile cuts that you'll want to do, you're going to need a router. This is my router, and the one I swear by. You can pick them up for around $250 to $300 brand new in the States. You're probably half that if you're looking at second-hand one.
I agree with that 100%. I've seen your review video on the Makita. It's an indispensable tool. Next, to cut straight, curves, intricate shapes, angles, you're going to need a jigsaw. We agree that the jigsaw is the most versatile tool in the shop for cutting. However, if you know you're going to be building cabinets, tables, units, you're going to be making about 90% straight line cuts, I would suggest getting a circular saw.
And you can get a good jigsaw for around $150. Next, for both rough and finish sanding, there's lots of sanders that can do rough sanding really well. In order to do finish sanding really well, you do need a random orbital sander. This is my 125mm DeWalt random orbit sander. It's about $150, perhaps less, and there's a lot of options around for the same kind of money.
In ancient Greek, that's 5 inches.
It is. And if I'm going to talk in dollars, I should also talk in inches, shouldn't I? That was my mistake. Sorry.
Next, and we really don't need to talk about what this does, you're going to need a drill for basically every project you do in your shop. But it doesn't need to be an expensive drill, and it definitely does not need to be a hammer drill. Check the reviews. You can get into a good drill for around $100.
And that's it for power tools. Everything beyond what we've actually been through here is going to save you a bit of time, a bit of convenience, in some cases a lot of time and a lot of convenience, admittedly, but it's not things that you can't achieve with these tools. Everything from this point forward actually helps you improve the quality of the stuff that you produce, starting with laying out tools. In order to measure perfect 90 degrees or to measure any variation in angles in between that, these are the tools that you need. First up, the most expensive one is a machinist or engineering square, just a small one. You won't believe how much you'll use these things, and it's also the way that you can measure the quality of the other ones that you get. A speed square is an absolute essential. They all look pretty much like this, depending on what size they come in. It's the one that has the lip that you hold a piece of wood against. Have a look on YouTube at the videos, look at everything these things do. You'll absolutely use it all the time. Another one you'll use all the time for 90 degrees, 45 degrees, and for measuring is a combination square. Most of them come with metric on one side, imperial on the other. That's quite a handy thing to have. It's another essential. And lastly, a sliding bevel angle finder for anything outside of the usual 90 or 45 degrees, which will be a lot of the case. Any kind of angle that you need to find, mark and measure, this will be your go-to device. Absolute essential.
The prices we're popping on the screen from now on represent how much we think you should budget for getting a nice quality tool. To be able to measure accurately, you're going to need a set of digital calipers. We recommend spending at least $30 on a set of these. The cheaper ones are not as accurate and they crap out really quickly. So stick to that budget and get yourself a nice quality tool.
For precision measuring, in fact, firstly, for non-precision measuring, you need a extremely crap tape measure that costs a maximum of 50 cents, unless you can get one free from somewhere, because you can only ever use this for rough measurements, but you do need one. For actual precision measurements, this is what we recommend, and we both use these, in fact. Steel rulers. I have a 1 meter, a 50 centimeter and a 15 centimeter, and I probably use all of them as much as each other. They're absolute essentials. They're what you should be using for accurate measuring. And what I was going to do, Todd, in this one, is to say what you should use to mark them, but you would murder me if I took that privilege away from you. So,
ooh, pencils. Ah, right up my alley. I've got an assortment right here at the ready, actually. They're all in my pocket. You don't need to rush out and spend a bunch of money on these. I have an unhealthy obsession with writing utensils. But you will need a 0.5, a 0.7, and a 0.9 millimeter mechanical pencil. You can get these anywhere between $5 and $12 each. And one more thing, a protractor. I use this thing daily in my shop, and nothing else gets me the accurate measurements, especially when it comes to angles and things like that, as this protractor does. I use this thing all the time. It's such a great tool.
You're aware that you've just recommended only spending $20 on a pencil.
I know, and that's not like me at all, you guys. I mean, if we really had to get down into it, I'd say rush out and buy all Permicha Pros from Odo. But you won't get those for $12, you know.
And there we go. Welcome back, Todd.
I also highly recommend the Pentel Graph Gear 1000s.
Next up is one of those things you will do all the time, and that is clamping a straight edge to your workpiece for things like grouting, sawing, marking up. Having a decent straight edge is an absolute essential, and it's worth spending the money here to get something that is a precision straight edge.
I agree with that, and you can get into a nice straight edge for anywhere from 25 to 40 bucks, I would say. So next up, you're going to need a way to do those tiny little cuts that you can achieve with the power saw. I recommend a flush cut Japanese pull saw. I've got an assortment of saws out right here, but this is the one I find will cover the most ground when it comes right down to it. You can look to spend about 20 bucks for one of these and get yourself a decent tool. Another thing I really recommend is a scalpel or an X-Acto knife. I like a scalpel personally, and you're looking at about 10 bucks or so to get one of these in an assortment of blades. But highly recommended.
Okay, now this is one I'm absolutely passionate about, Todd, and I know that you are the same. So if you're a woodworker and you don't know about these are Iwasaki files. So you can literally do away with a whole set of rasps and files for woodworking, just getting 4 of these things, and that's what we're going to suggest that you do. So for rough to super fine carving on any type of wood, we're going to suggest getting 2 of the medium files, the half round and the flat, and to get 2 fine cut files, the half round and the flat, in the smaller versions. Todd, am I overselling how good these things are?
Absolutely not. The ones you just mentioned, I happen to have out here too. I guess we just think that much alike, but man, I'm telling you, since I discovered the Iwasaki's, you're so correct in saying you can replace a full rack of rasping files with these things. They are phenomenal.
Yeah, it is a really difficult thing to explain to people that haven't used one, but the best way I can think of it is to say it's not like a rasp or a file. It's like having 1,000 mini hand planes on a file. That's how much material and how cleanly it takes stuff away. They are one of the best finds that I have ever come across for woodworking.
They absolutely are. The cool thing I love about an Iwasaki is that based on how you use these things and you can adjust your angle of attack, you can leave a super clean, finish ready surface, or you can really remove a bunch of material with these things. It's all based on how you use it. Such a versatile tool.
I think we have completely sold that one, how good they are. If you're a woodworker and you haven't got these, get them. You will thank us for it, trust me.
So for precision cleanups of your cuts, your joints, anything like that, you're going to need a couple of chisels. We're not going to recommend that you buy a full set. What we think is you should get 2 Narex chisels. These represent the best bang for the buck. This is a 20 millimeter and a 6 millimeter. These will serve you well, and this is really all you need. And occasionally you're going to need to give these things a little tap. That's what this metal ring's for. That's what this mallet's for. This also comes in really handy for tapping joints together and things like that.
Right, the one thing we are universally agreed on is that you can never have enough clamps. So this is what I've got set up here, and I've also got about 4 or 5 bar clamps that are up behind the camera there. But what I would suggest you do is to start off with a selection of $5 and $10 clamps, and only replace them for higher quality ones if you find that you need to do that. Because in all honesty, what I found in a lot of cases, like with these, is that I haven't replaced them for higher quality clamps because they serve me absolutely fine. So I'm going to suggest, if you are into the idea of making big tables, if you're likely to do big glue ups, that you need at least 3 clamps so that you can have start, middle and end bar clamps. For general woodworking, I'd suggest getting 8 medium-sized clamps, at least a couple of which are speed clamps, because you'll quite often clamp things down to your workbench, and a selection of small hand clamps, because you will use these things all the time.
You will indeed use them all the time. I have just recently acquired 2 of these ratchet style clamps. I only paid like 20 bucks for 2 of these, and these have made such a great addition to my clamp arsenal, I guess you would say. These things are really great. You can get them on Amazon, wherever you choose to get your clamps at. But I agree with everything Gio said there. You can never have enough clamps. For all those straight and perfect edges, you're going to need a hand plane. This is a Stanley number 5. I am not going to recommend that you go as far down this rabbit hole as I have gone. I have literally spent thousands of dollars on hand planes. But in reality, you can get this number 5 for about 40 bucks. And this is the plane that I recommend you get, and the most versatile in my opinion.
And if you do get the hand plane and you have the chisels, you'll need a way of sharpening them. So you can do that with either a sharpening stone, which I don't have here, or by using sandpaper on a piece of glass, which is the actual method I use. But Todd, I know that you do have a sharpening stone, and those are pretty reasonably priced.
I do. I normally use a sharpening stone, but I've used glass as well. Either of those will produce a fine edge on any cutting tool. You're looking at around $20 to $25 to get into that. And I'm sure, as most of you realize, you're going to need screwdrivers of some type. I highly recommend a bit driver and an assortment of bits. This will cover everything you need it to do, and you're looking around 15 to 20 bucks to get you a nice setup.
Okay, I have just saved us from getting murdered in the comments. Do you know what we've forgotten? It wasn't a deliberate omission. Eyes and ears first. It is worth just getting, because you're going to wear these things a lot, they're not expensive, and it's worth getting something comfy, and that will also make you more likely to use them, because let's face it, we don't all use them when we should do.
Glasses are never a problem for me. I've always got 2 or 3 pair on my head, but when it comes to hearing and breathing, that's easy stuff to forget, but you really need to make sure you're protected. The fine dust that comes from sanding, that is what hurts you, that is what puts your health at risk. Get yourself a respirator.
And I think with that, Todd, I think that's the lot. So if you're an experienced woodworker and you think there's anything missing from this list, then absolutely do let us know, because I'm sure that we have forgotten something, but that covers everything that we can think of. The one thing that you will notice that we haven't talked about is blades like saw blades, router bits, drill bits, and consumables, things like sandpaper. The reason for that is that I think if you're doing this, particularly if you're doing it on a budget, Todd, tell me if you agree, I would buy those things as I go.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's based on the type of work you're planning on doing, really. And it's hard to say which consumables you're going to need without first knowing what type of projects you're going to be producing, you know?
So that's the reason for not including them in all this. But I think you should be able to, we priced everything up as new, but you should be able to come in well under that budget if you're being frugal. So with that in mind, Todd, what would you do if I gave you an extra $500? What's the next thing you would spend money on?
As tempting as it would be for me to rush out and buy more hand planes, I think I would probably go for some more surfacing tools, like maybe a handheld belt sander. And now that I think of it, maybe a router table. I think that's where I'd spend my money.
Yeah, I would say that's money well spent. In fact, I would get a belt sander as well. And going back to the start, because a belt sander, a handheld belt sander, which I do have, but you can get those really cheap. Now, I would have also got the jigsaw at the start rather than a circular saw. So I think with an extra 400 or so, I would get a track saw. And the reason for that is that I do have a track saw, and since I've had that, I haven't used the table saw. Now, I know that that's just for the stuff that I'm using, but between a belt sander and a track saw, those are 2 really big time savers. I think in terms of bang for your buck time savers, that's money well spent.
I could not agree more, and space is such a consideration for people with smaller shops like we have. When it comes to tools like band saws or table saws, in my opinion, those are things that can wait. Figure out what you love about woodworking, what projects you want to work on, and let that be the deciding factor of where you spend any extra money. Don't rush out and buy a bunch of tools that you may never need.
Do you know, I absolutely agree. That is really great advice. And I think what we've done is to cover off, I mean, going down the list, we wanted to do this based on things that you can do. So I think that we have covered off a lot there. Hopefully you can see that with all of those things, that's a huge amount of things that you can actually do in your woodworking projects.
Indeed. And with that said, I really hope you got something out of this video. We've got much more content planned along these lines coming up here in the future, and I hope to see all of you there.
What do we traditionally say at this point?
Let the outtakes begin.
Indeed. I've got it all sorted. You should just buy 37 sets of our Bench Critters Gecko Block set. Now that's consumer advice. Welcome, I'm Gio. This is...
Oh, nah.
We have...
Just as part of it.
It's hard, isn't it? We're like a pair of idiots today.
That's the one
Sorry.
I know.
Right, here we go. We have, and if you are a regular viewer of...
Yeah, I think we're good, man. We'll be fine. We're going to hit our flow here in a minute.